H.G. Wells,
Jules Verne,
Jane Austen, or maybe some Sherlock Holmes.
You ever hear of any of those names? Probably. Chances are if you live anywhere in the world, there's at least one person in the area who knows some of those names. But especially here in America, all these titles contribute to our culture. And through our culture, we are able to communicate different sayings, different signs, different idioms. When you walk down the street and you see that red octagon with 4 letters on it, do you know what it means? It means stop. When I tell you that green means go, do you know what I'm referring to? All these ideas, these things, make up our country's cultural literacy. The idea that these sayings and symbols and pieces of language and history all work together to help us form a common culture. And through this culture, we are able to communicate. This again is known as cultural literacy. Now, what we're going to talk about today from the comfort of my room is how does cultural literacy affect education? Is it the same as it was 50 years ago? And if it isn't, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Through my research, I found that a lot of people say it's bad, and that American culture is causing the education system to deteriorate. You know, you often hear the phrase of your grandparents saying, "When I was your age." Yeah, we know. When they were our age, it was much different. They didn't have AIM, they didn't have Skype, they didn't have computers or cell phones. All these things were different. But have these changes to our society caused a new cultural literacy? Or has it caused cultural literacy to deteriorate? One or the other. Through this little journey today, we'll decide. Come along with me and we'll find out. But don't get too excited. You'll be counting your chickens before they hatch. Do you know what that means? If you do, you know a piece of cultural literacy. Let's learn a little bit more. This is my desk. It's where I feel most studious. So I've been doing my research on this project, and one of the things I found that one of the leading scholars on cultural literacy, Dr. Hirsch, says is that Americans should be culturally literate by the 6th grade. Now, this really surprised me because the 6th grade, you got a lot of stuff on your mind. You don't know how to spell big words, you probably can't even write an essay yet. You don't know how to do abstract calculus or anything like that. And you're trying to figure out your own body during 6th grade. But at the same time, this doctor, and an expert on cultural literacy, says that Americans should be culturally literate by the 6th grade. Alright. So you should be culturally literate. Like I said before, you should know what counting your chickens before they hatch means. But that's not all he says. Throughout the course of his works, he identifies several hundred different phrases and historical figures and pieces of literature that America should be familiar with by the time they're in 6th grade. So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little test. I've got a 7th grader, a 9th grader, and an 11th grader. Right? Should be simple. They should be able to ace all these things. They should be able to tell you what they mean and use them in a sentence. Why? Because they're past 6th grade. That means they should be culturally literate. Right? Now, before we go on, let me just point out something too. The place I got these different idioms, phrases, symbols, things like that from are from Dr. Hirsch's works. He's one of my primary sources for this little experiment. The book we're getting these things from is from 1987. A little outdated. You think in the past 25 years, nothing about the internet is going to be in this book. Nothing about iPads or iPods or anything like that. World of Warcraft, you got nothing like that in these books. Right? However, the things in these works Hirsch claims are undying and unchanging. They're classic pieces of literature, classic pieces of history, classic historical figures that everyone should be familiar with. In fact, many of them aren't from the 80s, you know, when a time where you had the Cold War, where you had a very distinct brand of music and a very distinct style of clothing. A lot of these things aren't from that era. They're from even farther back. We're talking the Bible. We're talking ancient Greece. We're talking the creation, the American Revolution, the Civil War, things like that. These are the important things that Americans should be culturally aware of. So, Plus the difference between 25 years when you're going back several hundred. Shouldn't make a big deal, right? So, like I said before, we're going to talk to these students, a 7th grader, a 9th grader, and 11th grader, and see if they can get a hang of this cultural literacy thing. If so, then I guess Hirsch is right. These things are undying and definitely a part of our culture. If not, then I guess our generation is in trouble. Let's go find out.
Alright, so here are our 3 students. We have a 7th grader, a 9th grader, and an 11th grader. They're very happy to be here today. So here's what we're going to do. Hirsch gives us several topics about cultural literacy. We're going to ask them about each and just ask them to give us a short description or use it in a sentence or answer simple questions like that. So let's go around the room. First thing we're going to start with is our proverbs. Now, a proverb is an old familiar saying having been handed down through the years, often rhymes, and it teaches you how to live. Let's ask the 7th grader the first one. Alright, 7th grader, if I said to you, mind your P's and Q's, what does that mean?
It means mind what you say.
Let's move on. Next question. Let's see, the 9th grader. What does the saying, once bitten, twice shy mean?
I don't know.
Moving on.
Seems complicated.
11th grader. What does it mean to say, to strike while the iron is hot?
I'm guessing it's gonna hurt.
Good guess.
Alright, so let's see how they did. We asked the 6th grader to mind her P's and
7th grader.
Q's. 7th grader to mind her P's and Q's. What does that mean? It means be on your best behavior. The saying comes from when kids used to confuse the letter P's and Q's. We asked the 9th grader what it meant to be once bitten, twice shy. Well, that means that once someone's been hurt, they're going to be a little bit more cautious around things. You know, if you get bit by a dog, you're usually afraid of dogs. And we asked the 11th grader what it means to strike while the iron is hot. That means take the opportunity when you get it. For example, a blacksmith strikes the iron when it's hot. That's when he's able to bend it. So how did they do on the idiom section? I guess they got half a point out of 3. Let's move on.
Alright, now we're moving on to the idiom section of the test. An idiom is a phrase that always appears in the same form, and it makes an expression more vivid, adds imagery to it. So, let's start with the 7th grader. 7th grader, what does it mean if I said to you, you're acting like a bull in a china shop?
Well, it means that you're being really rough and not really polite.
Polite. Alright, moving on. 9th grader, what does it mean if I said, kill 2 birds with 1 stone?
Kill 2 people in 1 strike.
Moving on to the 11th grader. What does it mean if I told you someone was a wolf in sheep's clothing?
Means they're not who they really are. Seem to be.
Alrighty. That was our section on idioms.
Let's talk about idioms a little. They're really vivid expressions. The 7th grader got asked about being a bull in the china shop, and she said it meant about being polite. Wrong. If you're a bull in a china shop, you're big and clumsy. Going on. The 9th grader was asked about to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I thought it was about actually killing people. It's not. It's about taking the opportunity to get 2 things done at once. But surprisingly, the 11th grader did get the wolf in sheep's clothing question correct. It does mean that there's someone pretending to be something that they're not. Let's go on to the next section and see how they do that.
Alright, now we're going to be talking to these students about literature. The following are lists of works that Hirsch has deemed very important to our culture, either because they add cultural icons or they have such good structure that everyone should have studied them in school. So, we'll start with the 7th grader. 7th grader, can you tell us a little bit about the story of the Raven?
I never heard of that one.
Alright, fair enough. 9th grader, can you tell us about a little bit about the story of Don Quixote? Yes or no?
It's about a Japanese guy.
As bad Japanese guy. Very good. Going on. 11th grader, can you tell us something about the story of King Arthur?
He's that guy that pulled the sword from the stone.
Can you tell us anything else about the sword and stone or about King Arthur?
He's a king.
He's a king. Alrighty. That was our section on literature.
Alright, let's talk a little bit about literature. We asked the 7th grader about The Raven. It's a poem by Edgar Allan Poe. We would have taken anything from it's about a bird, it's a poem, or the word nevermore, which is the word that the raven is shouting, the entire poem. We asked the 9th grader about Don Quixote. Well, it's a famous story from Spain about a madman who thinks he can battle windmills. He's a soldier over there, and his sidekick is Sancho Panza. We also asked the 11th grader a little bit about King Arthur. Well, she mentioned the Sword and the Stone, however, it's a very small part of the story of King Arthur. Most of the story about King Arthur is about him meeting the Lady in the Lake, leading the Knights of the Round Table, and his sword, Excalibur, along with his mentor, Merlin. Any of those would have been a little bit better. So how did they do on this? Half a point out of 3 again?
Alright, students, now we're going on to mythology. Mythology are traditional stories about gods and goddesses. Many cultures have myths, although most famous ones come from Greece and Rome. Now, even though we live in America and not Greece or Rome, many of these myths still have an impact on our American culture. So let's see what these students know. Let's start with the 7th grader. 7th grader, can you tell us a little bit about what the Fates are?
The Fates are 3 dead people, and they have the strings of people, and it's their souls, and they cut them in half, and it makes the people die.
Very nice. Alright, let's go on. Nicholas, the 9th grader, can you tell us a little bit about what sirens are?
Yes or no question?
Alright, moving on.
They go, we want top of fire trucks.
Alright, the last one, the 11th grader. Can you tell us a little about the Sphinx? What is a Sphinx?
The Sphinx is like the statue like in Egypt, and it's like the lion body and the head of like a person.
Alrighty, let's see how they did on mythology.
Alright, so we asked them a couple questions about mythology. All of these things that we asked them have been found in countless different things of media around our American culture. But what did they know? Well, you see, the 7th grader didn't know about the Fates. They were these not dead people, but immortals that contained the strings of life, and they would cut the strings when a person's life was over, sending their soul to the underworld. However, that was also in the Disney version of Hercules, so can we count that? I don't know. Next, we asked the 9th grade boy about sirens. Sirens do not go wee-woo. They were the mythical goddesses of the sea who led sailors into their rocky shores in order to kill them. Not wee-woo. Lastly, we asked the 11th grader about what a sphinx was, and she gave the typical Egyptian answer. Yes, it was a creature that had the body of a lion and a head of a woman, but it actually comes from Greek culture, not Egypt. And it was a mythical creature that would give explorers a riddle, and if they couldn't answer it, she would eat them. The man who did answer her riddle, what goes on 4 feet in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening, was Oedipus. The answer to the riddle? A person. A baby crawls at 4 feet when it's first born, walks on 2 when it's middle age, and when you're old, you have a cane, 3 feet. So, I guess they didn't get that myth. Sorry, 11th grader. Moving on.
Moving on to music and art. Now, Hirsch has chosen many lyrics, monuments, and pieces of art well known in culture that people should probably be familiar with because of their parodying in culture or their specific meaning. Let's find out how they'll do on this section. For our 7th grader, can you tell us what primary colors are?
The primary colors are, the basic colors of when you have a pattern in a rhythm or a music little sheet.
Moving on. Next question for our 9th grader. 9th grader, tell us what the Colosseum is.
It's a place in Rome where gladiators would fight each other and the emperor would come and watch.
Alrighty. Let's go on to our 11th grader. 11th grader, can you tell us a little bit about the old poem, Hush Little Baby?
No, I can't.
You don't know anything about it?
I've never heard of it.
How it goes?
I'm guessing it goes hush little baby.
Alright. Let's move on.
Alright.